Everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. Nothing should be used for one's sense gratification. That is real renunciation. Nor should one unnecessarily increase the necessities of the body. We should be satisfied with whatever is offered and supplied by Krishna without much personal endeavor. We should spend our time executing devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That is the solution to the problem of life and death. Text 48. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus one can be unconcerned with this material world. Purport. It is sometimes misunderstood that if one has to associate with persons engaged in devotional service, he will not be able to solve the economic problem. To answer this argument, it is described here that one has to associate with liberated persons, not directly, physically, but by understanding, through philosophy and logic, the problems of life. It is stated here, samyak darshanya buddhya. One has to see perfectly, and by intelligence and yogic practice, one has to renounce this world. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The devotee's intelligence is always in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His attitude towards the material existence is one of detachment, for he knows exactly well that this material world is a creation of illusory energy. Realizing himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, the devotee discharges his devotional service and is completely aloof from material action and reaction. Thus, at the end, he gives up his material body, or the material energy, and as pure soul he enters the kingdom of God. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the third canto, 31st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kapila's Instructions on the Movements of the Living Entities. Chapter 32. Entanglement in Fruitive Activities. Text 1. The Personality of Godhead said, the person who lives in the center of household life derives material benefits by performing religious rituals, and thereby he fulfills his desire for economic development and sense gratification. Again and again he acts the same way. Purport. There are two kinds of householders. One is called Grihamedi, and the other is called the Grihasta. The objective of the Grihamedi is sense gratification, and the objective of the Grihasta is self-realization. Here the Lord is speaking about the Grihamedi, or the person who wants to remain in this material world. His activity is to enjoy material benefits by performing religious rituals for economic development, and thereby ultimately satisfy the senses. He does not want anything more. Such a person works very hard throughout his life to become very rich and eat very nicely and drink. By giving some charity for pious activity, he can go to a higher planetary atmosphere in the heavenly planets in his next life. But he does not want to stop the repetition of birth and death and finish with the concomitant miserable factors of material existence. Such a person is called a Grihamedi. A Grihasta is a person who lives with family, wife, children, and relatives, but has no attachment for them. He prefers to live in family life rather than as a mendicant or sannyasi, but his chief aim is to achieve self-realization, or to come to the standard of Krishna consciousness. Here, however, Lord Kapiladeva is speaking about the Grihamedis, who have made their aim the materialistically prosperous life, which they achieve by sacrificial ceremonies, by charities, and by good work. They are posted in good positions, and since they know that they are using up their assets of pious activities, they again and again perform activities of sense gratification. It is said by Prahlada Maharaj, Punapunas Charvita Charvananam. They prefer to chew the already chewed. Again and again they experience the material pangs, even if they are rich and prosperous. But they do not want to give up this kind of life. Text 2. Such persons are ever bereft of devotional service due to being too attached to sense gratification, and therefore, although they perform various kinds of sacrifices and take great vows to satisfy the demigods and forefathers, they are not interested in Krishna consciousness, devotional service. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita 7.20, it is said that persons who worship demigods have lost their intelligence. Kamais tais tair hirta jnana. They are much attracted to sense gratification, and therefore they worship the demigods. It is of course recommended in the Vedic scriptures that if one wants money, health, or education, then he should worship the various demigods. A materialistic person has manifold demands, and thus there are manifold demigods to satisfy his senses. The Grihamedis, who want to continue a prosperous materialistic way of life, generally worship the demigods or the forefathers by offering pinda or respectful oblations. Such persons are bereft of Krishna consciousness and are not interested in devotional service to the Lord. This kind of so-called pious and religious man is the result of impersonalism. The impersonalists maintain that the supreme absolute truth has no form, and that one can imagine any form he likes for his benefit and worship in that way. Therefore the Grihamedis, or materialistic men, say that they can worship any form of a demigod as worship of the Supreme Lord. Especially amongst the Hindus, those who are meat-eaters prefer to worship goddess Kali, because it is prescribed that one can sacrifice a goat before that goddess. They maintain that whether one worships the goddess Kali, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, or any demigod, the destination is the same. This is first-class rascaldom, and such people are misled, but they prefer this philosophy. Bhagavad Gita does not accept such rascaldom, and it is clearly stated that such methods are meant for persons who have lost their intelligence. The same judgment is confirmed here, and the word kamamuddha, meaning one who has lost his sense or is infatuated by the lust of attraction for sense gratification, is used. Kamamuddhas are bereft of Krishna consciousness and devotional service, and are infatuated by a strong desire for sense gratification. The worshippers of demigods are condemned both in Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 3. Such materialistic persons, attracted by sense gratification and devoted to the forefathers and demigods, can be elevated to the moon, where they drink an extract of the soma plant. They again return to this planet. Purport. The moon is considered one of the planets of the heavenly kingdom. One can be promoted to this planet by executing different sacrifices recommended in the Vedic literature, such as pious activities in worshipping the demigods and forefathers with rigidity and vows. But one cannot remain there for a very long time. Life on the moon is said to last 10,000 years according to the calculation of the demigods. The demigods' time is calculated in such a way that one day, 12 hours, is equal to 6 months on this planet. It is not possible to reach the moon by any material vehicle like a Sputnik, but persons who are attracted by material enjoyment can go to the moon by pious activities. In spite of being promoted to the moon, however, one has to come back to this earth again when the merits of his works and sacrifice are finished. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.21. Tetam bhuktva svargalokam vissaram ksine punye martyalokam visanti. Text 4. All the planets of the materialistic persons, including all the heavenly planets, such as the moon, are vanquished when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, goes to his bed of serpents, which is known as Anantasesha. Purport. The materially attached are very eager to promote themselves to the heavenly planets such as the moon. There are many heavenly planets to which they aspire, just to achieve more and more material happiness by getting a long duration of life and the paraphernalia for sense enjoyment. But the attached persons do not know that even if one goes to the highest planet, Brahmaloka, destruction exists there also. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that one can even go to the Brahmaloka, but still he will find the pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. Only by approaching the Lord's abode, the Vaikuntha Loka, does one not take birth again in this material world. The Grihamedis, or materialistic persons, however, do not like to use this advantage. They would prefer to transmigrate perpetually from one body to another, or from one planet to another. They do not want the eternal, blissful life and knowledge in the kingdom of God. There are two kinds of dissolutions. One dissolution takes place at the end of the life of Brahma. At that time, all the planetary systems, including the heavenly systems, are dissolved in water and enter into the body of Garbhodaka Vishnu, who lies on the Garbhodaka ocean on the bed of serpents called Sesha. In the other dissolution, which occurs at the end of Brahma's day, all the lower planetary systems are destroyed. When Lord Brahma rises after his night, these lower planetary systems are again created. The statement in Bhagavad Gita that persons who worship the demigods have lost their intelligence is confirmed in this verse. These less intelligent persons do not know that even if they are promoted to the heavenly planets, at the time of dissolution they themselves, the demigods, and all their planets will be annihilated. They have no information that eternal, blissful life can be attained. Text 5. Those who are intelligent and are of purified consciousness are completely satisfied in Krishna consciousness. Freed from the modes of material nature, they do not act for sense gratification. Rather, since they are situated in their own occupational duties, they act as one is expected to act. Purport. The first-class example of this type of man is Arjuna. Arjuna was a kshatriya, and his occupational duty was to fight. Generally, kings fight to extend their kingdoms, which they rule for sense gratification. But as far as Arjuna is concerned, he declined to fight for his own sense gratification. He said that although he could get a kingdom by fighting with his relatives, he did not want to fight with them. But when he was ordered by Krishna and convinced by the teachings of Bhagavad Gita that his duty was to satisfy Krishna, then he fought. Thus he fought not for his sense gratification, but for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Persons who work at their prescribed duties, not for sense gratification, but for gratification of the Supreme Lord, are called nisanga, freed from the influence of the modes of material nature. Nyasta karmana indicates that the results of their activities are given to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such persons appear to be acting on the platform of their respective duties, but such activities are not performed for personal sense gratification. Rather, they are performed for the Supreme Person. Such devotees are called prasanta, which means completely satisfied. Sudachatasha means Krishna conscious. Their consciousness has become purified. In unpurified consciousness, one thinks of himself as the Lord of the universe, but in purified consciousness, one thinks himself the eternal servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Putting himself in that position of eternal servitorship to the Supreme Lord and working for him perpetually, one actually becomes completely satisfied. As long as one works for his personal sense gratification, he will always be full of anxiety. That is the difference between ordinary consciousness and Krishna consciousness. Text 6. By executing one's occupational duties, acting with detachment and without a sense of proprietorship or false egoism, one is posted in one's constitutional position by dint of complete purification of consciousness, and by thus executing so-called material duties, he can easily enter into the kingdom of God. Purport. Here the word Nivritti Dharma Nirata means constantly engaging in executing religious activities for detachment. There are two kinds of religious performances. One is called Pravritti Dharma, which means the religious activities performed by the Grihamedis for elevation to higher planets or for economic prosperity, the final aim of which is sense gratification. Every one of us who has come to this material world has the sense of overlordship. This is called pravritti, but the opposite type of religious performance, which is called nivritti, is to act for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Engaged in devotional service in Krishna consciousness, one has no proprietorship claim, nor is one situated in the false egoism of thinking that he is God or the Master. He always thinks himself the servant. That is the process of purifying consciousness. With pure consciousness only can one enter into the kingdom of God. Materialistic persons in their elevated condition can enter any one of the planets within this material world, but all are subjected to dissolution over and over again. Text 7. Through the path of illumination, such liberated persons approach the complete personality of Godhead, who is the proprietor of the material and spiritual worlds, and is the supreme cause of their manifestation and dissolution. Purport. The word Suryadvarana means by the illuminated path, or through the sun planet. The illuminated path is devotional service. It is advised in the Vedas not to pass through the darkness, but to pass through the sun planet. It is also recommended here that by traversing the illuminated path, one can be freed from the contamination of the material modes of nature. By that path one can enter into the kingdom where the completely perfect personality of Godhead resides. The words Purusham Visvata Mukham mean the supreme personality of Godhead, who is all perfect. All living entities other than the supreme personality of Godhead are very small, although they may be big by our calculation. Everyone is infinitesimal, and therefore in the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is called the Supreme Eternal amongst all eternals. He is the proprietor of the material and spiritual worlds, and the supreme cause of manifestation. Material nature is only the ingredient, because actually the manifestation is caused by his energy. The material energy is also his energy. Just as the combination of father and mother is the cause of childbirth, so the combination of the material energy and the glance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of the manifestation of the material world. The efficient cause, therefore, is not matter, but the Lord himself. Text 8. Worshippers of the Hiranyagarbha expansion of the personality of Godhead remain within this material world until the end of two paradise, when Lord Brahma also dies. Purport. One dissolution is at the end of Brahma's day, and one is at the end of Brahma's life. Brahma dies at the end of two paradise, at which time the entire material universe is dissolved. Persons who are worshippers of Hiranyagarbha, the plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, do not directly approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead in Vaikuntha. They remain within the universe on Satyaloka or other higher planets until the end of the life of Brahma. Then with Brahma they are elevated to the spiritual kingdom. The words Parashya Parachintaka mean always thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or being always Krishna conscious. When we speak of Krishna, this refers to the complete category of Vishnu Tattva. Krishna includes the three Purusha incarnations, namely Mahavishnu, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, and Ksirodakasaya Vishnu, as well as all the incarnations taken together. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Ramadi Murtisu Kalaniyamina Tistan. Lord Krishna is perpetually situated with his many expansions, such as Ram, Narasimha, Vamana, Madhusudana, Vishnu, and Narayana. He exists with all his plenary portions and the portions of his plenary portions, and each of them is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Parasya Parachintaka mean those who are fully Krishna conscious. Such persons enter directly into the kingdom of God, the Vaikuntha planets, or if they are worshippers of the plenary portion, Garbhodakasaya Vishnu, they remain within this universe until its dissolution, and after that they enter. Text 9. After experiencing the inhabitable time of the three modes of material nature, known as two paradas, Lord Brahma closes the material universe, which is covered by layers of earth, water, air, fire, ether, mind, ego, etc., and goes back to Godhead. Purport. The word avyakritam is very significant in this verse. The same meaning is stated in Bhagavad Gita in the word sanatana. The material world is vyakrita, or subject to changes, and it finally dissolves. But after the dissolution of this material world, the manifestation of the spiritual world, the Sanatana Dhamma, remains. That spiritual sky is called avyakrita, that which does not change. and there the Supreme Personality of Godhead resides. When, after ruling over the material universe under the influence of the time element, Lord Brahma desires to dissolve it and enter into the kingdom of God, others then enter with him. Text 10. The yogis who become detached from the material world by practice of breathing exercises and control of the mind reach the planet of Brahma, which is far, far away. After giving up their bodies, they enter into the body of Lord Brahma, and therefore when Brahma is liberated and goes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supreme Brahman, such yogis can also enter into the kingdom of God. Purport. By perfecting their yogic practice, yogis can reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, and after giving up their material bodies, they can enter into the body of Lord Brahma. Because they are not directly devotees of the Lord, they cannot get liberation directly. They have to wait until Brahma is liberated, and only then, along with Brahma, are they also liberated. It is clear that as long as a living entity is a worshipper of a particular demigod, his consciousness is absorbed in thoughts of that demigod, and therefore he cannot get direct liberation or entrance into the kingdom of God, nor can he merge into the impersonal effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such yogis or demigod worshippers are subjected to the chance of taking birth again when there is again creation. Text 11. Therefore, my dear mother, by devotional service take direct shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated in everyone's heart. Purport. One can attain direct contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in full Krishna consciousness and revive one's eternal relationship with him as lover, as Supreme Soul, as son, as friend, or as master. One can re-establish the transcendental loving relationship with the Supreme Lord in so many ways, and that feeling is true oneness. The oneness of the Mayavadi philosophers and the oneness of Vaishnava philosophers are different. The Mayavadi and Vaishnava philosophers both want to merge into the Supreme, but the Vaishnavas do not lose their identities. They want to keep the identity of lover, parent, friend, or servant. In the transcendental world, the servant and master are one. That is the absolute platform. Although the relationship is servant and master, both the servant and the served stand on the same platform. That is oneness. Lord Kapila advised his mother that she did not need any indirect process. She was already situated in that direct process because the Supreme Lord had taken birth as her son. Actually, she did not need any further instruction because she was already in the perfectional stage. Kapila Deva advised her to continue in the same way. He therefore addressed his mother as Brahmini to indicate that she was already thinking of the Lord as her son. Devahuti is advised by Lord Kapila to take directly to devotional service, Krishna consciousness, because without that consciousness one cannot become liberated from the clutches of Maya. Text 12 through 15. My dear mother, someone may worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a special self-interest, but even demigods such as Lord Brahma, great sages such as Sanat Kumara, and great munis such as Marichi have to come back to the material world again at the time of creation. When the interaction of the three modes of material nature begins, Brahma, who is the creator of this cosmic manifestation, and who is full of Vedic knowledge, and the great sages, who are the authors of the spiritual path and the yoga system, come back under the influence of the time factor. They are liberated by their non-fruitive activities, and they attain the first incarnation of the Purusha, but at the time of creation they come back in exactly the same forms and positions as they had previously. Purport. That Brahma becomes liberated is known to everyone, but he cannot liberate his devotees. Demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva cannot give liberation to any living entity. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, only one who surrenders unto Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, can be liberated from the clutches of Maya. Brahma is called here Adyastiracharanam. He is the original first created living entity, and after his own birth he creates the entire cosmic manifestation. He was fully instructed in the matter of creation by the Supreme Lord. Here he is called Vedagarbha, which means that he knows the complete purpose of the Vedas. He is always accompanied by such great personalities as Marichi, Kasyapa, and the seven sages, as well as by great mystic yogis, the Kumaras, and many other spiritually advanced living entities, but he has his own interest, separate from the Lord's. Vedadurstya means that Brahma sometimes thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord, or he thinks of himself as one of the three equally independent incarnations. Brahma is entrusted with creation, Vishnu maintains, and Rudra, Lord Shiva, destroys. The three of them are understood to be incarnations of the Supreme Lord, in charge of the three different material modes of nature, but none of them is independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Here the word Vedadurstya occurs because Brahma has a slight inclination to think that he is as independent as Rudra. Sometimes Brahma thinks that he is independent of the Supreme Lord, and the worshipper also thinks that Brahma is independent. For this reason, after the destruction of this material world, when there is again creation by the interaction of the material modes of nature, Brahma comes back. Although Brahma reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu, who is full with transcendental qualities, he cannot stay in the spiritual world. The specific significance of his coming back may be noted. Brahma and the great rishis and the great master of yoga, Shiva, are not ordinary living entities. They are very powerful and have all the perfections of mystic yoga, but still they have an inclination to try to become one with the Supreme, and therefore they have to come back. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is accepted that as long as one thinks that he is equal with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is not completely purified or knowledgeable. In spite of going up to the first Purusha Avatara, Mahavishnu, after the dissolution of this material creation, such personalities again fall down or come back to the material creation. It is a great fall down on the part of the impersonalist to think that the Supreme Lord appears within a material body, and that one should therefore not meditate upon the form of the Supreme, but should meditate instead on the formless. For this particular mistake, even the great mystic yogis or great stalwart transcendentalists also come back again when there is creation. All living entities other than the impersonalists and monists can directly take to devotional service in full Krishna consciousness and become liberated by developing transcendental loving service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such devotional service develops in the degrees of thinking of the Supreme Lord as Master, as Friend, as Son, and at last as Lover. These distinctions in transcendental variegatedness must always be present. Text 16. Persons who are too addicted to this material world execute their prescribed duties very nicely and with great faith. They daily perform all such prescribed duties with attachment to the fruit of result. Purport. In this and the following 6 verses, the Srimad Bhagavatam criticizes persons who are too materially attached. It is enjoined in the Vedic scriptures that those who are attached to the enjoyment of material facilities have to sacrifice and undergo certain ritualistic performances. They have to observe certain rules and regulations in their daily lives to be elevated to the heavenly planets. It is stated in this verse that such persons cannot be liberated at any time. Those who worship demigods with the consciousness that each and every demigod is a separate god cannot be elevated to the spiritual world. What to speak of persons who are simply attached to duties for the upliftment of their material condition? Text 17. Such persons, impelled by the mode of passion, are full of anxieties and always aspire for sense gratification due to uncontrolled senses. They worship the forefathers and are busy day and night improving the economic condition of their family, social, or national life. Text 18. Such persons are called Trivargika because they are interested in the 3 elevating processes. They are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can give relief to the conditioned soul. They are not interested in the Supreme Personality's pastimes, which are worth hearing because of his transcendental prowess. Purport. According to Vedic thought, there are 4 elevating principles, namely religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Persons who are simply interested in material enjoyment make plans to execute prescribed duties. They are interested in the three elevating processes of religious rituals, economic elevation, and sense enjoyment. By developing their economic condition, they can enjoy material life. Materialistic persons, therefore, are interested in those elevating processes, which are called trivargika. Tri means three, vargika means elevating processes. Such materialistic persons are never attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Rather, they are antagonistic towards him. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is here described as Harimeta, or he who can deliver one from the cycle of birth and death. Materialistic persons are never interested in hearing about the marvelous pastimes of the Lord. They think that they are fictions and stories, and that the Supreme Godhead is also a man of material nature. They are not fit for advancing in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Such materialistic persons are interested in newspaper stories, novels, and imaginary dramas. The factual activities of the Lord, such as Lord Krishna's acting in the battle of Kurukshetra, or the activities of the Pandavas, or the Lord's activities in Vrindavana or Dwarka, are related in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which are full of the activities of the Lord. But materialistic persons who engage in elevating their position in the material world are not interested in such activities of the Lord. They may be interested in the activities of a great politician or a great rich man of this world, but they are not interested in the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. Text 19. Such persons are condemned by the Supreme Order of the Lord because they are averse to the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They are compared to stool-eating hogs. They give up hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord and indulge in hearing of the abominable activities of materialistic persons. Purport. Everyone is addicted to hearing of the activities of another person, whether a politician or a rich man or an imaginary character whose activities are created in a novel. There are so many nonsensical literatures, stories, and books of speculative philosophy. Materialistic persons are very interested in reading such literature, but when they are presented with genuine books of knowledge like Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Purana, or other scriptures of the world, such as the Bible and Quran, they are not interested. These persons are condemned by the Supreme Order as much as a hog is condemned. The hog is interested in eating stool. If the hog is offered some nice preparation made of condensed milk or ghee, he won't like it. He would prefer obnoxious, bad-smelling stool, which he finds very relishable. Materialistic persons are considered condemned because they are interested in hellish activities and not in transcendental activities. The message of the Lord's activities is nectar, and besides that message, any information in which we may be interested is actually hellish. Text 20. Such materialistic persons are allowed to go to the planet called Pitriloka by the southern course of the sun, but they again come back to this planet and take birth in their own families, beginning again the same fruit of activities from birth to the end of life. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, verse 21, it is stated that such persons are elevated to the higher planetary systems. As soon as their lifetimes of fruit of activity are finished, they return to this planet, and thus they go up and come down. Those who are elevated to the higher planets again come back into the same family for which they had too much attachment. They are born, and the fruit of activities continue again until the end of life. There are different prescribed rituals from birth until the end of life, and they are very much attached to such activities. Text 21. When the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they fall down by higher arrangement and again come back to this planet. Just as any person raised to a high position sometimes all of a sudden falls. Purport. It is sometimes found that a person elevated to a very high position in government service falls down all of a sudden, and no one can check him. Similarly, after finishing their period of enjoyment, foolish persons who are very much interested in being elevated to the position of president in higher planets also fall down to this planet. The distinction between the elevated position of a devotee and that of an ordinary person attracted to fruitive activities is that when a devotee is elevated to the spiritual kingdom, he never falls down, whereas an ordinary person falls. Even if he is elevated to the highest planetary system, Brahmaloka, it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuvanaloka, that even if one is elevated to a higher planet, he has come down again. But Krishna confirms in Bhagavad Gita 8:16, Mam upetya tukanteya punajanma navidyate. Anyone who attains my abode never comes back to this conditional life of material existence. Text 22. My dear mother, I therefore advise that you take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for his lotus feet are worth worshipping. Accept this with all devotion and love, for thus you can be situated in transcendental devotional service. Purport. The word parameshtinam is sometimes used in connection with Brahma. Parameshti means the Supreme Person. As Brahma is the Supreme Person within this universe, Krishna is the Supreme Personality in the spiritual world. Lord Kapiladeva advises his mother that she should take shelter in the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, because it is worthwhile. Taking shelter of demigods, even those in the highest positions like Brahma and Shiva, is not advised herein. One should take shelter of the Supreme Godhead. Sharva Bhavana means in all loving ecstasy. Bhava is the preliminary stage of elevation before the attainment of pure love of Godhead. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita, Buddha Bhava Samandita. One who has attained the stage of Bhava can accept the lotus feet of Lord Krishna as worshipable. This is also advised here by Lord Kapila to his mother. Also significant in this verse is the phrase Tad Gunasrayaya Bhaktya. This means that discharging devotional service unto Krishna is transcendental. It is not material activity. This is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Those who engage in devotional service are accepted to be situated in the spiritual kingdom. Brahma Bhoyaya Kalpade. They at once become situated in the transcendental kingdom. Devotional service in full Krishna consciousness is the only means for attaining the highest perfection of life for the human being. This is recommended herein by Lord Kapila to his mother. Bhakti is therefore nirguna, free from all tinges of material qualities. Although the discharge of devotional service appears to be like material activities, it is never saguna or contaminated by material qualities. Tadgunasrayaya means the Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities are so sublime that there is no need to divert one's attention to any other activities. His behavior with the devotees is so exalted that a devotee need not try to divert his attention to any other worship. It is said that the demoniac Putana came to kill Krishna by poisoning him, but because Krishna was pleased to suck her breast, she was given the same position as his mother. Devotees pray, therefore, that if a demon who wanted to kill Krishna gets such an exalted position, why should they go to anyone other than Krishna for their worshipful attachment? There are two kinds of religious activities, one for material advancement and the other for spiritual advancement. By taking shelter under the lotus feet of Krishna, one is endowed with both kinds of prosperity, material and spiritual. Why then should one go to any demigod? Text 23. Engagement in Krishna consciousness and application of devotional service unto Krishna make it possible to advance in knowledge and detachment as well as in self-realization. Purport. It is said by less intelligent men that bhakti yoga, or devotional service, is meant for persons who are not advanced in transcendental knowledge and renunciation. But the fact is that if one engages in the devotional service of the Lord in full Krishna consciousness, he does not have to attempt separately to practice detachment or to wait for an awakening of transcendental knowledge. It is said that one who engages unflinchingly in the devotional service of the Lord actually has all the good qualities of the demigods develop in him automatically. One cannot discover how such good qualities develop in the body of a devotee, but actually it happens. There is one instance where a hunter was taking pleasure in killing animals, but after becoming a devotee, he was not prepared to kill even an ant. Such is the quality of a devotee. Those who are very eager to advance in transcendental knowledge can engage themselves in pure devotional service without wasting time in mental speculation. For arriving at the positive conclusions of knowledge and the absolute truth, the word Brahmadarshanam is significant in this verse. Brahmadarshanam means to realize or to understand the transcendence. One who engages in the service of Vasudeva can actually realize what Brahman is. If Brahman is impersonal, then there is no question of darshanam, which means seeing face to face. Darshanam refers to seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Unless the seer and the seen are persons, there is no darshanam. Brahma darshanam means that as soon as one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can at once realize what impersonal Brahman is. A devotee does not need to make separate investigations to understand the nature of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita also confirms this. Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. A devotee at once becomes a self-realized soul in the absolute truth. Text 24. The exalted devotee's mind becomes equipoised in sensory activities, and he is transcendental to that which is agreeable and not agreeable. Purport. The significance of advancement in transcendental knowledge and detachment from material attraction is exhibited in the personality of a highly advanced devotee. For him there is nothing agreeable or disagreeable, because he does not act in any way for his personal sense gratification. Whatever he does, whatever he thinks, is for the satisfaction of the personality of Godhead. Either in the material world or in the spiritual world, his equipoised mind is completely manifested. He can understand that in the material world there is nothing good. Everything is bad due to its being contaminated by material nature. The materialist conclusions of good and bad, moral and immoral, etc., are simply mental concoction or sentiment. Actually, there is nothing good in the material world. In the spiritual field, everything is absolutely good. There is no inebriety in the spiritual varieties, because a devotee accepts everything in spiritual vision. He is equipoised. That is the symptom of his being elevated to the transcendental position. He automatically attains detachment, vairagya, then jnana, knowledge, and then actual transcendental knowledge. The conclusion is that an advanced devotee dovetails himself in the transcendental qualities of the Lord, and in that sense he becomes qualitatively one with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 25. Because of his transcendental intelligence, the pure devotee is equipoised in his vision and sees himself to be uncontaminated by matter. He does not see anything as superior or inferior, and he feels himself elevated to the transcendental platform of being equal in qualities with the Supreme Person. Purport. Perception of the disagreeable arises from attachment. A devotee has no personal attachment to anything. Therefore, for him there is no question of agreeable or disagreeable. For the service of the Lord he can accept anything, even though it may be disagreeable to his personal interest. In fact, he is completely free from personal interest, and thus anything agreeable to the Lord is agreeable to him. For example, for Arjuna, at first fighting was not agreeable, but when he understood that the fighting was agreeable to the Lord, he accepted the fighting as agreeable. That is the position of a pure devotee. For his personal interest there is nothing which is agreeable or disagreeable. Everything is done for the Lord, and therefore he is free from attachment and detachment. That is the transcendental stage of neutrality. A pure devotee enjoys life in the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Text 26. The Supreme Personality of Godhead alone is complete transcendental knowledge, but according to the different processes of understanding, he appears differently, either as impersonal Brahman, as Paramatma, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or as the Purusha Avatara. Purport. The word Dirshyaadibhi is significant. According to Jivaka Swami, Dirshi means jnana, philosophical research. By different processes of philosophical research, under different concepts, such as the process of jnana yoga, the same Bhagavan, or Supreme Personality of Godhead, is understood as impersonal Brahman. Similarly, by the Eightfold Yoga system, he appears as the Paramatma, but in pure Krishna consciousness, or knowledge in purity, when one tries to understand the Absolute Truth, one realizes him as the Supreme Person. The transcendence is realized simply on the basis of knowledge. The words used here, Paramatmeshvara Puman, are all transcendental, and they refer to Supersoul. Supersoul is also described as Purusha. Supersoul is also described as Purusha, but the word Bhagavan directly refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of six opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. He is the personality of Godhead in different spiritual skies. The various descriptions of Paramatma, Ishvara, and Puman indicate that the expansions of the Supreme Godhead are unlimited. Ultimately, to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to accept Bhakti Yoga. By executing Jnana Yoga or Dhyana Yoga, one has to eventually approach the Bhakti Yoga platform, and then Paramatma, Ishvara, Puman, etc. are all clearly understood. It is recommended in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam that whether one is a devotee or fruitive actor or liberationist, if he is intelligent enough, he should engage himself with all seriousness in the process of devotional service. It is also explained that whatever one desires which is obtainable by fruitive activities, even if one wants to be elevated to higher planets, can be achieved simply by execution of devotional service. Since the Supreme Lord is full in six opulences, he can bestow any one of them upon the worshipper. The one Supreme Personality of Godhead reveals himself to different thinkers as the Supreme Person, or impersonal Brahman, or Paramatma. Impersonalists merge into the impersonal Brahman, but that is not achieved by worshipping the impersonal Brahman. If one takes to devotional service, and at the same time desires to merge into the existence of the Supreme Lord, he can achieve that. If someone desires at all to merge into the existence of the Supreme, he has to execute devotional service. The devotee can see the Supreme Lord face to face, but the jnani, the empiric philosopher or yogi, cannot. They cannot be elevated to the positions of associations of the Lord. There is no evidence in the scriptures stating that by cultivating knowledge or worshipping the impersonal Brahman, one can become a personal associate of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, nor by executing the yogic principles can one become an associate of the Supreme Godhead. Impersonal Brahman, being formless, is described as adrisya because the impersonal effulgence of Brahmajyoti covers the face of the Supreme Lord. Some yogis see the four-handed Vishnu sitting within the heart, and therefore, in their case, also the Supreme Lord is invisible. Only for the devotees is the Lord visible. Here the statement Dirshi Adibi is significant. Since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is both visible and invisible, there are different features of the Lord. The Paramatma feature and Brahman feature are invisible, but the Bhagavan feature is visible. In the Vishnu Purana, this fact is very nicely explained. The universal form of the Lord and the formless Brahman effulgence of the Lord, being invisible, are inferior features. The concept of the universal form is material, and the concept of impersonal Brahman is spiritual, but the highest spiritual understanding is the personality of Godhead. The Vishnu Purana states, Vishnu Brahma Svarupena Svayam Eva Vyavastita. Brahman's real feature is Vishnu, or the Supreme Brahman is Vishnu. Svayam Eva, that is his personal feature. The supreme spiritual conception is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Yadgatva na nirvartate taddhamma paramam mama. That specific abode called paramam mama is the place from which, once one attains it, one does not return to this miserable conditional life. Every place, every space, and everything belongs to Vishnu, but where he personally lives is taddhamma paramam, his supreme abode. One has to make one's destination the supreme abode of the Lord. Text 27. The greatest common understanding for all yogis is complete detachment from matter, which can be achieved by different kinds of yoga. Purport. There are three kinds of yoga, namely Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Astanga Yoga. Devotees, jnanis, and yogis all try to get out of the material entanglement. The jnanis try to detach their sensual activities from material engagement. The jnana yogi thinks that matter is false and that Brahman is truth. He tries, therefore, by cultivation of knowledge, to detach the senses from material enjoyment. The Astanga yogis also try to control the senses. The devotees, however, try to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. Therefore, it appears that the activities of the bhaktas, devotees, are better than those of the jnanis and yogis. The mystic yogis simply try to control the senses by practicing the 8 divisions of yoga, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, etc., and the jnanis try by mental reasoning to understand that sense enjoyment is false. But the easiest and most direct process is to engage the senses in the service of the Lord. The purpose of all yoga is to detach one's sense activities from this material world. The final aims, however, are different. Jnanis want to become one with the Brahman effulgence, yogis want to realize Paramatma, and devotees want to develop Krishna consciousness and transcendental loving service to the Lord. That loving service is the perfect stage of sense control. The senses are actually active symptoms of life, and they cannot be stopped. They can be detached only if there is superior engagement. As it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, param durstva nivartate, the activities of the senses can be stopped if they are given superior engagements. The supreme engagement is engagement of the senses in the service of the Lord. That is the purpose of all yoga. Text 28. Those who are averse to the transcendence realize the supreme absolute truth differently through speculative sense perception, and therefore, because of mistaken speculation, everything appears to them to be relative. Purport. The supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, is one, and he is spread everywhere in his impersonal feature. This is clearly expressed in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna says, "Everything that is experienced is but an expansion of my energy." Everything is sustained by him, but that does not mean that he is in everything. Sense perceptions, such as oral perception of the sound of a drum, visual perception of a beautiful woman, or perception of the delicious taste of a milk preparation by the tongue, all come through different senses and are therefore differently understood. Therefore, sensory knowledge is divided in different categories, although actually everything is one as a manifestation of the energy of the Supreme Lord. Similarly, the energies of fire are heat and illumination, and by these two energies, fire can display itself in many varieties, or in diversified sense perception. Mayavadi philosophers declare this diversity to be false, but Vaishnava philosophers do not accept the different manifestations as false. They accept them as non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are a display of his diverse energies. The philosophy that the Absolute is true, and this creation is false, Brahma Satyam Jagammitya, is not accepted by Vaishnava philosophers. The example is given that although all that glitters is not gold, this does not mean that a glittering object is false. For example, an oyster shell appears to be golden. This appearance of golden hue is due only to the perception of the eyes, but that does not mean that the oyster shell is false. Similarly, by seeing the form of Lord Krishna, one cannot understand what he actually is, but this does not mean that he is false. The form of Krishna has to be understood as it is described in the books of knowledge, such as Brahma Samhita, Ishvar Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has an eternal, blissful spiritual body. By our imperfect sense perception, we cannot understand the form of the Lord. We have to acquire knowledge about him. Therefore it is said here, Jananam Ekam. Bhagavad Gita confirms that they are fools who, simply upon seeing Krishna, consider him a common man. They do not know the unlimited knowledge, power, and opulence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Material sense speculation leads to the conclusion that the Supreme is formless. It is because of such mental speculation that the conditioned soul remains in ignorance under the spell of illusory energy. The Supreme Person has to be understood by the transcendental sound vibrated by him in Bhagavad Gita, wherein he says that there is nothing superior to himself. The impersonal Brahman effulgence is resting on his personality. The purified, absolute vision of Bhagavad Gita is compared to the river Ganges. Ganges water is so pure that it can purify even the asses and cows. But anyone who, disregarding the pure Ganges, wishes to be purified instead by the filthy water flowing in a drain, cannot be successful. Similarly, one can successfully attain pure knowledge of the Absolute only by hearing from the pure Absolute himself. In this verse it is clearly said that those who are averse to the Supreme Personality of Godhead speculate with their imperfect senses about the nature of the Absolute Truth. The formless Brahman conception, however, can be received only by oral reception and not by personal experience. Knowledge is therefore acquired by oral reception. It is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Shastra Yonitvat. One has to acquire pure knowledge from the authorized scriptures. So-called speculative arguments about the absolute truth are therefore useless. The actual identity of the living entity is his consciousness, which is always present, while the living entity is awake, dreaming, or in deep sleep. Even in deep sleep he can perceive by consciousness whether he is happy or distressed. Thus, when consciousness is displayed, through the medium of the subtle and gross material bodies, it is covered, but when the consciousness is purified in Krishna consciousness, one becomes free from the entanglement of repeated birth and death. When uncontaminated pure knowledge is uncovered from the modes of material nature, the actual identity of the living entity is discovered. He is eternally a servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process of uncovering is like this. The rays of sunshine are luminous, and the sun itself is also luminous. In the presence of the sun, the rays illuminate just like the sun, but when the sunshine is covered by the spell of a cloud, or by Maya, then darkness, the imperfection of perception, begins. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of the spell of nescience, one has to awaken his spiritual consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, in terms of the authorized scriptures. Text 29. From the total energy, the Mahatattva, I have manifested the false ego, the three modes of material nature, the five material elements, the individual consciousness, the 11 senses, and the material body. Similarly, the entire universe has come from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. The Supreme Lord is described as Mahatpada, which means that the total material energy, known as the Mahatattva, is lying at his lotus feet. The origin, or the total energy of the cosmic manifestation, is the Mahatattva. From the Mahatattva, all the other 24 divisions have sprung, namely the 11 senses, including the mind, the 5 sense objects, the 5 material elements, and then consciousness, intelligence, and false ego. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of the Mahatattva, and therefore, in one sense, because everything is an emanation from the Supreme Lord, there is no difference between the Lord and the cosmic manifestation. But at the same time, the cosmic manifestation is different from the Lord. The word Svarat is very significant here. Svarat means independent. The Supreme Lord is independent, and the individual soul is also independent. Although there is no comparison between the two qualities of independence, the living entity is minutely independent, and the Supreme Lord is fully independent. As the individual soul has a material body made of 5 elements and the senses, the Supreme Independent Lord similarly has the gigantic body of the universe. The individual body is temporary. Similarly, the entire universe, which is considered to be the body of the Supreme Lord, is also temporary, and both the individual and universal bodies are products of the Mahatattva. One has to understand the differences with intelligence. Everyone knows that his material body has developed from a spiritual spark, and similarly, the universal body has developed from the Supreme Spark, Supersoul. As the individual body develops from the individual soul, the gigantic body of the universe develops from the Supreme Soul. Just as the individual soul has consciousness, the Supreme Soul is also conscious. But although there is a similarity between the consciousness of the Supreme Soul and the consciousness of the individual soul, the individual soul's consciousness is limited, whereas the consciousness of the Supreme Soul is unlimited. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 13.3. Kshetrajnam kapimam vidhi. The super soul is present in every field of activity, just as the individual soul is present in the individual body. Both of them are conscious. The difference is that the individual soul is conscious of the individual body, whereas the super soul is conscious of the total number of individual bodies. Text 30. This perfect knowledge can be achieved by a person who is already engaged in devotional service with faith, steadiness, and full detachment, and who is always absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme. He is aloof from material association. Purport. The atheistic mystic practitioner of yoga cannot understand this perfect knowledge. Only persons who engage in the practical activities of devotional service in full Krishna consciousness can become absorbed in full samadhi. It is possible for them to see and understand the actual fact of the entire cosmic manifestation and its cause. It is clearly stated here that this is not possible to understand for one who has not developed devotional service in full faith. The words samahitatma and samadhi are synonymous. Text 31. My dear respectful mother, I have already described the path of understanding the absolute truth, by which one can come to understand the real truth of matter and spirit of their relationship. Text 32. Philosophical research culminates in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After achieving this understanding, when one becomes free from the material modes of nature, he attains the stage of devotional service. Either by devotional service directly or by philosophical research, one has to find the same destination, which is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. It is said in Bhagavad Gita that after many, many lives of philosophical research, the wise man ultimately comes to the point of knowing that Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is everything, and therefore he surrenders unto him. Such serious students in philosophical research are rare because they are very great souls. If by philosophical research one cannot come to the point of understanding the Supreme Person, then this task is not finished. His search and knowledge is still to be continued until he comes to the point of understanding the Supreme Lord in devotional service. The opportunity for direct touch with the personality of Godhead is given in Bhagavad Gita, where it is also said that those who take to other processes, namely the processes of philosophical speculation and mystic yoga practice, have much trouble. After many, many years of much trouble, a yogi or wise philosopher may come to him, but his path is very troublesome. Whereas the path of devotional service is easy for everyone. One can achieve the result of wise philosophical speculation simply by discharging devotional service, and unless one reaches the point of understanding the personality of Godhead by his mental speculation, all his research work is said to be simply a labor of love. The ultimate destination of the wise philosopher is to merge in the impersonal Brahman, but that Brahman is the effulgence of the Supreme Person. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 14:27, Brahmano hi pratistaham amritasya yasyasya cha. I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, which is indestructible and is the supreme bliss. The Lord is the supreme reservoir of all pleasure, including Brahman pleasure. Therefore, one who has unflinching faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead is said to be already realized in impersonal Brahman and Paramatma. Text 33. A single object is appreciated differently by different senses due to its having different qualities. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one, but according to different scriptural injunctions, he appears to be different. Purport. It appears that by following the path of Jnana Yoga, or empiric philosophical speculation, one reaches the impersonal Brahman, whereas by executing devotional service in Krishna consciousness, one enriches his faith in and devotion to the personality of Godhead. By the process of Jnana Yoga, the same personality of Godhead appears to be impersonal. As the same object appears to be different when perceived by different senses, the same Supreme Lord appears to be impersonable by mental speculation. A hill appears cloudy from a distance, and one who does not know may speculate that the hill is a cloud. Actually, it is not a cloud, it is a big hill. One has to learn from authority that the sight of a cloud is not actually a cloud but a hill. If one makes a little more progress, then instead of a cloud, he sees the hill and something green. When one actually approaches the hill, he will see many varieties. Another example is in perceiving milk. When we see milk, we see that it is white. When we taste it, it appears that the milk is very palatable. When we touch milk, it appears very cold. When we smell milk, it appears to have a very good flavor. And when we hear, we understand that it is called milk. Perceiving milk with different senses, we say that it is something white, something very delicious, something very aromatic, and so on. Actually, it is milk. Similarly, those who are trying to find the Supreme Godhead by mental speculation may approach the bodily effulgence, or the impersonal Brahman, and those who are trying to find the Supreme Godhead by yoga practice may find him as the localized Supersoul. But those who are directly trying to approach the Supreme Truth by practice of Bhakti Yoga can see him face to face as the Supreme Person. Ultimately, the Supreme Person is the destination of all different processes. The fortunate person who, by following the principles of scriptures, becomes completely purified of all material contamination, surrenders unto the Supreme Lord as everything. Just as one can appreciate the real taste of milk with the tongue and not with the eyes, nostrils, or ears, one can similarly appreciate the Absolute Truth perfectly and with all relishable pleasure only through one path, devotional service. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Bhaktyamam Abhijanati. If one wants to understand the Absolute Truth in perfection, he must take to devotional service. Of course, no one can understand the Absolute Truth in all perfection. That is not possible for the infinitesimal living entities, but the highest point of understanding by the living entity is reached by discharge of devotional service, not otherwise. By following various scriptural paths, one may come to the impersonal effulgence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The transcendental pleasure derived from merging with or understanding the impersonal Brahman is very extensive because Brahman is Ananta. Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam. Brahmananda is unlimited, but that unlimited pleasure can also be surpassed. That is the nature of the transcendence. The unlimited can be surpassed also, and that higher platform is Krishna. When one deals directly with Krishna, the mellow and the humor relished by reciprocation of devotional service is incomparable, even with the pleasure derived from transcendental Brahman. Prabhupada Sarasvati therefore says that Kaivalya, the Brahman pleasure, is undoubtedly very great and is appreciated by many philosophers, but to a devotee who has understood how to derive pleasure from exchanging devotional service with the Lord, this unlimited Brahman appears to be hellish. One should try therefore to transcend even the Brahman pleasure in order to approach the position of dealing with Krishna face to face. As the mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, Krishna is called the master of the senses. Hrishikesha. The process is to fix the mind on Hrishikesha, or Krishna, as Maharaja Ambarisha did. Savamana Krishna Padaravindayo. Bhakti is the basic principle of all processes. Without bhakti, neither jnana yoga nor astanga yoga can be successful. And unless one approaches Krishna, the principles of self-realization have no ultimate destination. Text 34 through 36. by performing fruitive activities and sacrifices, by distributing charity, by performing austerities, by studying various literatures, by conducting philosophical research, by controlling the mind, by subduing the senses, by accepting the renounced order of life, and by performing the prescribed duties of one's social order, by performing the different divisions of yoga practice, by performing devotional service, and by exhibiting the process of devotional service containing the symptoms of both attachment and detachment, by understanding the science of self-realization, and by developing a strong sense of detachment. One who is expert in understanding the different processes of self-realization realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead as he is represented in the material world as well as in transcendence. Purport. As it is stated in the previous verse, one has to follow the principles of the scriptures. There are different prescribed duties for persons in the different social and spiritual orders. Here it is stated that performance of fruitive activities and sacrifices and distribution of charity are activities meant for persons who are in the householder order of society. There are 4 orders of the social system: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. For the grihasthas, or householders, performance of sacrifices, distribution of charity, and action according to prescribed duties are especially recommended. Similarly, austerity, study of Vedic literature, and philosophical research are meant for the vanaprasthas, or retired persons. Study of the Vedic literature from the bona fide spiritual master is meant for the brahmachari, or student. Atmendriya Jaya, control of the mind, and taming of the senses, is meant for persons in the renounced order of life. All these different activities are prescribed for different persons so that they may be elevated to the platform of self-realization, and from there to Krishna consciousness, devotional service. The words Bhakti Yogana Chaivahi mean that whatever is to be performed as described in verse 34, whether yoga or sacrifice or fruitive activity or study of Vedic literature or philosophical research or acceptance of the renounced order of life, is to be executed in Bhakti Yoga. The words Chaivahi, according to Sanskrit grammar, indicate that one must perform all these activities mixed with devotional service. Otherwise, such activities will not produce any fruit. Any prescribed activity must be performed for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yat karoshe yad asnasi. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you sacrifice, whatever austerities you undergo, and whatever charities you give, the result should be given to the Supreme Lord. The word eva is added, indicating that one must execute activities in such a way. Unless one adds devotional service to all activities, he cannot achieve the desired result. But when Bhakti Yoga is prominent in every activity, then the ultimate goal is sure. One has to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as it is stated in Bhagavad Gita. After many, many births, one approaches the Supreme Person, Krishna, and surrenders unto him, knowing that he is everything. Also in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Bhaktaram yajna tapasam, Bhagavad Gita 5:29. For anyone who is undergoing rigid austerity, or for anyone performing different kinds of sacrifices, the beneficiary is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the proprietor of all planets, and he is the friend of every living soul. The words Dharmanobhaya Chinana mean that the Bhakti Yoga process contains 2 symptoms, namely attachment for the Supreme Lord and detachment from all material affinities. There are 2 symptoms of advancement in the process of devotional service, just as there are 2 processes taking place while eating. A hungry man feels strength and satisfaction from eating, and at the same time he gradually becomes detached from eating anymore. Similarly, with the execution of devotional service, real knowledge develops, and one becomes detached from all material activities. In no other activity but devotional service is there such detachment from matter and attachment for the Supreme. There are 9 different processes to increase this attachment to the Supreme Lord: hearing, chanting, remembering, worshiping, serving the Lord, making friendship, praying, offering everything, and serving the lotus feet of the Lord. The processes for increasing detachment from material affinities are explained in verse 36. One can achieve elevation to the higher planetary systems, like the heavenly kingdom, by executing one's prescribed duties and by performing sacrifices. When one is transcendental to such desires because of accepting the renounced order of life, he can understand the Brahman feature of the Supreme. And when one is able to see his real constitutional position, he sees all other processes and becomes situated in the stage of pure devotional service. At that time, he can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Understanding of the Supreme Person is called Atmatattva Avabodhana, which means understanding of one's real constitutional position. If one actually understands one's constitutional position as an eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord, he becomes detached from the service of the material world. Everyone engages in some sort of service. If one does not know one's constitutional position, one engages in the service of his personal gross body, or his family, society, or country. But as soon as one is able to see his constitutional position, the word svadirk means one who is able to see, he becomes detached from such material service and engages himself in devotional service. As long as one is in the modes of material nature and is performing the duties prescribed in the scriptures, he can be elevated to higher planetary systems, where the predominating deities are material representations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like the Sun God, the Moon God, the Air God, Brahma, and Lord Shiva. All the different demigods are material representations of the Supreme Lord. By material activities, one can approach only such demigods, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:25. Yanti deva vrata devan. Those who are attached to the demigods and who perform the prescribed duties can approach the abodes of the demigods. In this way, one can go to the planet of the Pittas, or forefathers. Similarly, one who fully understands the real position of his life adopts devotional service and realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 37. My dear Mother, I have explained to you the process of devotional service and its identity in 4 different social divisions. I have explained to you as well how eternal time is chasing the living entities, although it is imperceptible to them. Purport. The process of bhakti yoga, devotional service, is the main river flowing down towards the sea of the absolute truth, and all other processes mentioned are just like tributaries. Lord Kapila is summarizing the importance of the process of devotional service. Bhakti yoga, as described before, is divided into 4 divisions, 3 in the material modes of nature and 1 in transcendence, which is untinged by the modes of material nature. Devotional service mixed with the modes of material nature is a means for material existence, whereas devotional service without desires for fruit of result and without attempts for empirical philosophical research is pure, transcendental devotional service. Text 38. There are varieties of material existence for the living entity according to the work he performs in ignorance or forgetfulness of his real identity. My dear Mother, if anyone enters into that forgetfulness, he is unable to understand where his movements will end. Purport. Once one enters into the continuation of material existence, it is very difficult to get out. Therefore, the Supreme Personality of Godhead comes himself, or sends his bona fide representative, and he leaves behind scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so that the living entities hovering in the darkness of nescience may take advantage of the instructions, the saintly persons, and the spiritual masters, and thus be freed. Unless the living entity receives the mercy of the saintly persons, the spiritual master, or Krishna, it is not possible for him to get out of the darkness of material existence. By his own endeavor it is not possible. Text 39. Lord Kapila continued, this instruction is not meant for the envious, for the agnostics, or for persons who are unclean in their behavior, nor is it for hypocrites or for persons who are proud of material possessions. Text 40. It is not to be instructed to persons who are too greedy and too attached to family life, nor to persons who are non-devotees and who are envious of the devotees and of the personality of Godhead. Purport. Persons who are always planning to do harm to other living entities are not eligible to understand Krishna consciousness and cannot enter into the realm of transcendental loving service to the Lord. Also, there are so-called disciples who become submissive to a spiritual master most artificially, with an ulterior motive. They also cannot understand what Krishna consciousness or devotional service is. Persons who, due to being initiated by another sect of religious faith, do not find devotional service as the common platform for approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead, also cannot understand Krishna consciousness. We have experienced that some students come to join us, but because of being biased in some particular type of faith, they leave our camp and become lost in the wilderness. Actually, Krishna consciousness is not a sectarian religious faith. It is a teaching process for understanding the Supreme Lord and our relationship with Him. Anyone can join this movement without prejudice, but unfortunately there are persons who feel differently. It is better, therefore, not to instruct the science of Krishna consciousness to such persons. Generally, materialistic persons are after some name, fame, and material gain. So if someone takes to Krishna consciousness for these reasons, he will never be able to understand this philosophy. Such persons take to religious principles as a social decoration. They admit themselves into some cultural institution for the sake of name only, especially in this age. Such persons also cannot understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Even if one is not greedy for material possessions, but is too attached to family life, he also cannot understand Krishna consciousness. Superficially, such persons are not very greedy for material possessions, but they are too attached to wife, children, and family improvement. When a person is not contaminated by the above-mentioned faults, yet at the ultimate issue is not interested in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or if he is a non-devotee, he also cannot understand the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Text 41. Instruction should be given to the faithful devotee who is respectful to the spiritual master, non-envious, friendly to all kinds of living entities, and eager to render service with faith and sincerity. Text 42. This instruction should be imparted by the spiritual master to persons who have taken the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be more dear than anything, who are not envious of anyone, who are perfectly cleansed, and who have developed detachment for that which is outside the purview of Krishna consciousness. Purport. In the beginning, no one can be elevated to the highest stage of devotional service. Here, bhakta means one who does not hesitate to accept the reformatory processes for becoming a bhakta. In order to become a devotee of the Lord, one has to accept a spiritual master and inquire from him about how to progress in devotional service. To serve a devotee, to chant the holy name according to a certain counting method, to worship the deity, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita from a realized person, and to live in a sacred place where devotional service is not disturbed, are the first out of 64 devotional activities for making progress in devotional service. One who has accepted these 5 chief activities is called a devotee. One must be prepared to offer the necessary respect and honor to the spiritual master. He should not be unnecessarily envious of his god-brothers. Rather, if a god-brother is more enlightened and advanced in Krishna consciousness, one should accept him as almost equal to the spiritual master, and one should be happy to see such god-brothers advance in Krishna consciousness. A devotee should always be very kind to the general public in instructing Krishna consciousness, because that is the only solution for getting out of the clutches of Maya. That is really humanitarian work, for it is the way to show mercy to other people who need it very badly. The word susrishabhirataya indicates a person who faithfully engages in serving the spiritual master. One should give personal service and all kinds of comforts to the spiritual master. A devotee who does so is also a bona fide candidate for taking this instruction. The word bahirjata viragaya means a person who has developed detachment from external and internal material propensities. Not only is he detached from activities which are not connected to Krishna consciousness, but he should be internally averse to the material way of life. Such a person must be non-envious and should think of the welfare of all living entities, not only of the human beings, but living entities other than human beings. The word Suchaye means one who is cleansed both externally and internally. To become actually cleansed externally and internally, one should chant the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna or Vishnu, constantly. The word dhyatam means that knowledge of Krishna consciousness should be offered by the spiritual master. The spiritual master must not accept a disciple who is not qualified. He should not be professional and should not accept disciples for monetary gains. The bona fide spiritual master must see the bona fide qualities of a person whom he is going to initiate. An unworthy person should not be initiated. The spiritual master should train his disciple in such a way so that in the future only the Supreme Personality of Godhead will be the dearmost goal of his life. In these two verses, the qualities of a devotee are fully explained. One who has actually developed all the qualities listed in these verses is already elevated to the post of a devotee. If one has not developed all these qualities, he still has to fulfill these conditions in order to become a perfect devotee. Text 43. Anyone who once meditates upon me with faith and affection, who hears and chants about me, surely goes back home, back to Godhead. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta Purports of the 3rd Canto, 32nd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Entanglement in Fruitive Activities. Chapter 33. Activities of Kapila. Text 1. Sri Maitreya said, thus Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila and wife of Kardama Muni, became freed from all ignorance concerning devotional service and transcendental knowledge. She offered her obeisances unto the Lord, the author of the basic principles of the Sankhya system of philosophy, which is the background of liberation, and she satisfied him with the following verses of prayer. Purport. The system of philosophy enunciated by Lord Kapila before his mother is the background for situation on the spiritual platform. The specific significance of this system of philosophy is called herein as Siddhibhumim. It is the background of salvation. People who are suffering in this material world because they are conditioned by the material energy can easily get freedom from the clutches of matter by understanding the Sankhya philosophy enunciated by Lord Kapila. By this system of philosophy, one can immediately become free, even though one is situated in this material world. That stage is called Jivan Mukti. This means that one is liberated, even though one stays with his material body. That happened for Devahuti, the mother of Lord Kapila, and she therefore satisfied the Lord by offering her prayers. Anyone who understands the basic principle of Sankhya philosophy is elevated in devotional service and becomes fully Krishna conscious or liberated, even within this material world. Text 2. Devahuti said, Brahma is said to be unborn because he takes birth from the lotus flower, which grows from your abdomen, while you lie in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. But even Brahma simply meditated upon you, whose body is the source of unlimited universes. Purport. Brahma is also named Aja, he who is unborn. Whenever we think of someone's birth, there must be a material father and mother, for thus one is born. But Brahma, being the first living creature within this universe, was born directly from the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, the Vishnu form lying down in the ocean at the bottom of the universe. Devahuti wanted to impress upon the Lord that when Brahma wants to see him, he has to meditate upon him. You are the seed of all creation, she said. Although Brahma was directly born from you, he still has to perform many years of meditation, and even then he cannot see you directly, face to face. Your body is lying within the vast water at the bottom of the universe, and thus you are known as Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. The nature of the Lord's gigantic body is also explained in this verse. That body is transcendental, untouched by matter. Since the material manifestation has come from his body therefore existed before the material creation. The conclusion is that the transcendental body of Vishnu is not made of material elements. The body of Vishnu is the source of all other living entities, as well as the material nature, which is also supposed to be the energy of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Devahuti said, "You are the background of the material manifestation and all created energy. Therefore, your delivering me from the clutches of Maya by explaining the system of Sankhya philosophy is not so astonishing. But your being born from my abdomen is certainly wonderful, because although you are the source of all creation, you have so kindly taken birth as my child. That is most wonderful. Your body is the source of all the universe, and still you put your body within the abdomen of a common woman like me. To me that is most astonishing." Text 3. My dear Lord, although personally you have nothing to do, you have distributed your energies in the interactions of the material modes of nature, and for that reason the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic manifestation take place. My dear Lord, you are self-determined and are the Supreme Personality of Godhead for all living entities. For them you created this material manifestation, and although you are one, your diverse energies can act multifariously. This is inconceivable to us. Purport. The statement made in this verse by Devahuti that the Absolute Truth has many diverse energies, although he personally has nothing to do, is confirmed in the Upanishads. There is no one greater than him or on an equal level with him, and everything is completely done by his energy, as if by nature. It is understood herein, therefore, that although the modes of material nature are entrusted to different manifestations like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, each of whom is particularly invested with different kinds of power, the Supreme Lord is completely aloof from such activities. Devahuti is saying, although you personally are not doing anything, your determination is absolute. There is no question if you're fulfilling your will with the help of anyone else besides yourself. You are in the end the Supreme Soul and the Supreme Controller. Your will therefore cannot be checked by anyone else. The Supreme Lord can check others' plans. As it is said, man proposes and God disposes. But when the Supreme Personality of Godhead proposes, that desire is under no one else's control. He is absolute. We are ultimately dependent on him to fulfill our desires, but we cannot say that God's desires are also dependent. That is his inconceivable power. That which may be inconceivable for ordinary living entities is easily done by him, and in spite of his being unlimited, he has subjected himself to being known from the authoritative scriptures, like the Vedic literatures. As it is said, Sabda Mulatva, he can be known through the Sabda Brahma or Vedic literature. Why is the creation made? Since the Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for all living entities, he created this material manifestation for those living entities who want to enjoy or lord it over material nature. As the Supreme Godhead, he arranges to fulfill their various desires. It is confirmed also in the Vedas, Eko Bahumam Yo Vidadati Kamam. The Supreme One supplies the necessities of the many living entities. There is no limit to the demands of the different kinds of living entities, and the Supreme One, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, alone maintains them and supplies them by his inconceivable energy. Text 4. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, you have taken birth from my abdomen. O my Lord, how is that possible for the Supreme One, who has in his belly all the cosmic manifestation? The answer is that it is possible, for at the end of the millennium you lie down on a leaf of a banyan tree, and just like a small baby you lick the toe of your lotus foot. Purport. At the time of dissolution, the Lord sometimes appears as a small baby, lying on a leaf of a banyan tree, floating on the devastating water. Therefore, Devahuti suggests, your lying down within the abdomen of a common woman like me is not so astonishing. You can lie down on the leaf of a banyan tree and float on the water of devastation as a small baby. It is not very wonderful, therefore, that you can lie down in the abdomen of my body. You teach us that those who are very fond of children within this material world, and who therefore enter into marriage to enjoy family life with children, can also have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their child. And the most wonderful thing is that the Lord himself licks his toe. Since all the great sages and devotees apply all energy and all activities in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, there must be some transcendental pleasure in the toes of his lotus feet. The Lord licks his toe to taste the nectar for which the devotees always aspire. Sometimes the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself wonders how much transcendental pleasure is within himself, and in order to taste his own potency, he sometimes takes the position of tasting himself. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself, but he appears as a devotee to taste the sweetness of the transcendental mellow in himself, which is tasted by Srimati Radharani, the greatest of all devotees. Text 5. My dear Lord, you have assumed this body in order to diminish the sinful activities of the fallen and to enrich their knowledge and devotion and liberation. Since these sinful people are dependent on your direction, by your own will you assume incarnations as a boar and as other forms. Similarly, you have appeared in order to distribute transcendental knowledge to your dependents. Purport. In the previous verses, the general transcendental qualifications of the Supreme Personality of Godhead were described. Now the specific purpose of the Lord's appearance is also described. By his different energies, he bestows different kinds of bodies upon the living entities, who are conditioned by their propensity to lord it over material nature. But in course of time, these living entities become so degraded that they need enlightenment. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita that whenever there are discrepancies in the discharge of the real purpose of this material existence, the Lord appears as an incarnation. The Lord's form as Kapila directs the fallen souls and enriches them with knowledge and devotion so that they may go back to Godhead. There are many incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like those of the boar, the fish, the tortoise, and the half-man, half-lion. Lord Kapiladeva is also one of the incarnations of Godhead. It is accepted herein that Lord Kapiladeva appeared on the surface of the earth to give transcendental knowledge to the misguided conditioned souls.